Greetings! Back at it, doing another cheap heat video. Inexplicably, people watch these things. I'm not like one of the big time, YouTube video record personalities. I really don't know all that much. I'm just old. But I do like to find inexpensive records, and that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about, is finding really good music that's inexpensive. Some of it's kind of obscure, might need a little bit of time and effort. Some of it, you probably could pick up like at your nearest record hole. Anyway, glad you're watching this thing. Thanks for watching it. Completely non-commercial, completely untainted by anything other than my own ego, my own vast, gigantic ego. Anyway, I've picked out a bunch of, I'm a guitar freak. I play the drums, right? But my brother played guitar and he still does, thank God. And I'm just a guitar freak. And so I've got a lot of guitar-centric music in my collection. And I thought I'd isolate some of the cheap gems that have great guitarists on them, or that are dominated by guitar, or that are guitarist solo records. What we're listening in the background, very peaceful, I hope you can hear it, is this Wise McGraw. It's Dean McGraw and Marcus Wise, two guys out of the Steve Tippett's Minneapolis sort of universe. Dean McGraw is actually still active, still recording more now than he did previously. We'd heard of him before, and I was always really curious about his music. And he had made this beautiful acoustic record with tabla man Marcus Wise, who's also recorded quite a bit with Steve Tippett's, as I mentioned before. Anyway, this is all duets. I think there's some tambura, some harmonium on it, and it's a cheap record. It's on a tiny little label, I think Red House Records, out of St. Paul, Minnesota. Anyway, I got it for $7 on Discogs. Here's a name you're gonna know. You're gonna laugh. Larry Carlton. I'm an unabashed Larry Carlton fan. You can see where I got this. I got this at the thrift store. Somebody gave away their Larry Carlton collection. They had pretty much all of his solo records there. Larry Carlton's a really interesting musician, singer, composer, session man. He's mostly known for his work with the Crusaders. He did a bunch of solo records. The ones upon which he sings, I'm not as interested in as the mostly instrumental ones. Although he's a good singer. He's not a bad singer at all. I'm not knocking his singing. I just like jazz rock fusion, man, which typically doesn't have vocals. This is a really good record. This is called Sleepwalk, and it's got the pop hit Sleepwalk on it. I think like Link Ray or somebody did that originally. Dick Dale, I don't know who. Anyway, Larry Carlton's version's great. He's an unbelievable guitarist. This record's a little buttoned down. It's not super slick though. You'd be surprised. It's got some rough edges. It's really a nice record, and it's everywhere. And got great players on it. And I think this might have preceded that one. I also got this at the thrift store. I think this is from 1978, the tail end of the golden years. I think this is just called Larry Carlton. It's on Warner Brothers. Again, very common, mostly, if not all, instrumental. And just a fun record to have around, kind of like having those Robert and Ford records that I really like. Anyway, you can't go wrong with these two Larry Carlton records. The thing that made the Larry Carlton dig so special for me was finding this Japanese only Mr. 335. That's the kind of guitar he plays, the Gibson 335. It's a hollow body electric, and this record is the one. If you're gonna have one Larry Carlton record, this is the one you want. He does sing on it a little bit, but he really cuts loose on this. He just goes nuts, and he will I mean, if you hear this and you have any skepticism whatsoever, you will be convinced that he is a guitar god after you hear this. There's some Jeff Beck level stuff going on here. This guy is frankly an amazing player. and highly neglected. Great band too. Neil Steubenhouse on bass, Greg Matheson on keyboards, John Ferraro on drums, and Paulino DaCosta on percussion. That's the band on the other two records too. Basically, there's a few added horns and whatnot. Larry Carlton. So France had their version of Larry Carlton, and it's this guy, Jean-Michel Cajdan. And this record's still pretty cheap. It came out on Polydor in '79, I believe. And it's got all the French guys on it. It's got the Lockwood brothers, Didier and Francis. It's got Jean-Mi Trong and Manu Katché on drums. Francois Lezeau on drums. Kurt Rust on drums. Guy Khalifa on flute. Just the whole sort of magma French hip session dude axis is present on this record, and it plays out pretty much like a funky jazz Larry Carlton sort of guitar fusion record. It's a little too chill for my taste, but it's stayed in the collection. I've owned this record ever since I got it. It's got enough really cool stuff on it to keep it around. And if you like this kind of slick, sort of laid-back fusion, you can't go wrong. This is a really good record, and this guy can really play. He recorded several follow-ups, and of course, he's on many French jazz, funk, and rock, because he's a session guy, albums. This is a record I picked up in when I was in undergraduate. Wayne Johnson, and another sort of session-y guy, another guy from Minneapolis, actually, like Dean McGraw. He toured for years with the Manhattan Transfer. I don't know what he's doing now, but he recorded some really cool solo records. This is called Arrowhead. It was his first. It's got Flim Johnson on it, who did a lot of work with Holdsworth later on. Bill Berg on drums and percussion, an amazing drummer. Really underrated. He's on like the Natural Life records, and I think he's on the Robert Rockwell III record. Just a really great drummer. And this is all original compositions. It's kind of Metheny-esque. And I sold it a long time ago, and then I kind of had a jonesing for it because I found the follow-up to this is called Grasshopper. It came out on ITI. This is on Inner City, one of my favorite labels. And I found the CD of Grasshopper, which is actually worth getting. There's some really good tracks on it. It's a little slick, but this is less slick, and it's a really, really cool sort of atmospheric, almost ECM sounding record. And but Wayne Johnson does play some really slick stuff on this, and the band is tremendous. Arrowhead's the name of the record, and I really like it a lot. I recopped it, and I'm like, why did I get rid of this? Okay, so there's some record labels that are sort of slagged on the web, I've noticed. Mood Records from Germany, best known as the outlet for the United Jazz and Rock Orchestra. I don't know about you, I've never heard any of those records that I've liked, even though there's like amazing people on them. Wolfgang Dauner, Charlie Mariano, Eberhard Weber, John Heisman, Barbara Thompson, all in that band, Ian Carr. And they kind of do this sort of very sort of mellow, sort of smooth jazz sort of sound. But actually the Mood label has some really cool records on it. And these are two that you should actually chase down. The first one's by this guitarist, Michael Sagemeister. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. And he recorded a bunch for this label. This is called The Silent Spectacle. And the reason why I got this is because of this guy, Christoph Lauer. Powerhouse tenor player, sort of Germany's answer to Bob Berg, or maybe on a good day, Dave Liebman. This guy is like a fiery en fuego sort of tenor player, and I thought, well, this has got to be at least good. And it turns out it's great. It's a really excellent, uncompromising, hard-charging sort of post-bop modal jazz record. With Sagemeister playing a lot of electric stuff, not a lot of effects and stuff like that, not like a McLaughlin or a Metheny guy, more like in a sort of a post-bop guitar mode, sort of like Wolfgang Muthspiel, his countryman, definitely in that sort of vein. And the rest of the band's great. Michael Kuttner on drums and Jochen Schmidt on bass, both electric and acoustic. All original, just 4 tracks, nice stretchy tracks, lots of soloing. Is an excellent record, and it's cheap. His the later records he had a trio, I think, with the same bassist and drummer. It's also quite good, but definitely kind of toned down and more acoustic. But Michael Sagemeister, check it out, especially this record, Silent Spectacle. Another one on the Mood label that you absolutely cannot miss is this. And if you see these names and you know what I'm talking about, you're a fusion freak like me, jazz rock fusion freak. I am totally dyed in the wool. You're going to be like, oh, let me at that right now. So it's two guitars, bass and drums. The guitarists are Eve Albers and Daryl Thompson, both virtuoso, jazz rock players that a lot of people don't know about. And then, of course, Jerry Brown on drums, played with everybody, but most famously with the John Lee Jerry Brown Band, also with Philip Catherine, also with Michael Jackson, a tremendous drummer. And, of course, John Lee, amazing bass player. So this is very much in the mode of the Coryell Mouzon records that got released on, I think, Arista in the US in the late 70s. Really, really excellent high energy jazz rock fusion. You cannot go wrong with this one, even though it's on the much maligned Mood Records label. It's tremendous, and it's all original compositions written by all the band members. So can't go wrong with that one. It's called Brothers, by the way. So excellent record. Here's a guy that Christopher Cole brought to my attention. I did not know about him, John Macey. And this is another sort of high energy jazz rock fusion record. It's on a small label. It's 51 West. I think it was a very small subsidiary of Columbia Records. And this is an interesting record. It's all instrumental jazz rock fusion, different bands on each side. The first side, it's got Mark Gray, Hiram Bullock, and Steve Jordan on drums, and Neil Jason on bass. So it's that New York jazz rock fusion crowd, and it's a little funkier, a little bit slicker, a little bit more laid back. Side 2 has Macey's own band on it. Never heard of any of these guys. Rich Acchiavati on bass, Dave Bauer on drums, and Lou Argis on keyboards. It's a little bit more of a rock fusion sound, kind of like the Coryell Mouzon stuff, kind of like the Danny Tone records, which I think I've discussed in the past because they're cheap and they're also very good. But this guy is amazing. Really a great guitar player, technically quite excellent. He has a couple of other releases out. The one that came after this I thought was good, not great. And then he's got an EP that's really excellent, but it's also not cheap. So if you can chase down that EP, I think it's only 4 tracks. It's worth it. It's worth the $20 or whatever. This is like a $10 record. Pretty much all these are going to be like $10 plus postage if you get them off of Discogs. I had the good fortune of actually getting some of these on live digs. Some friends of mine bought out a dealer, and they got like the entire Mood catalog, and so they had like 20 of those Mood records each, and so they were cheap. I got lucky. So you might get lucky too. Here's a guy. What if I told you there was a guy out there who's playing, could play like Hendrix and McLaughlin combined in the same breath, and could also sing great, and could also compose really cool stuff? You'd want his records, right? Well, that guy exists. His name is John Paul Borelli, and this is his first record. I've got a bunch of his CDs, and he is definitely his own man. A lot of his stuff's pretty quirky. A lot of it's really cool. I'm a fan. This record's his first record. It's called Jungle Cowboy. It's on the JMT label. I got this locally for $5, and it's really excellent. He can sing, and he sings on a few tracks, but it doesn't kill the buzz. And there's some really, really fiery jazz rock fusion on this record. And if you're kind of attuned to the funkier side of the genre, I highly urge you to check out everything this guy's ever done. A lot of his later stuff, it's only on CD, unfortunately. Actually, I don't mind CDs at all, but a lot of people are picky. I'm not picky. I like CDs. A lot of those CDs have people like Olu Dara, Henry Threadgill, Craig Harris. The whole, gang is on them. Great drumming, great bass playing. His brother plays keyboards. Very uncompromised, very interesting, and very individualistic. This is probably his most accessible record stylistically, and I highly recommend it. And it's cheap, and get it. Jungle Cowboy. This has got Julius Hemphill on it, Andrew Cyril on one track, K-Dog Johnson, who was in the M-Bass crowd with Steve Coleman, Freddie Cash on bass, Kelvin Bell on guitar on a few tracks, and some other background singers. So this is really a good record. Can't recommend it enough. Speaking of really good records, we don't associate the ECM label with fiery jazz rock fusion, but there is some on it. And these guys seem to get ignored all the time. They were Lou Reed's backup band, believe it or not. They're called the Everyman Band. A very famous guitar producer dude was in this band named David Torn. And if you like David Torn, you need to own the Everyman Band records. There are 2 of them. This is their debut. It's self-titled. This is an amazing record. Marty Fogel on saxophones, Bruce Yaw on bass, and Michael Suchorsky on drums round out the personnel. All original tunes, and David Torn just kills on this. I mean, it's really, Fogel, the saxophone player, composed most of the tunes, but David Torn wrote a few of them. The drummer did one, the bassist did one, so it's kind of a cooperative group. But these are excellent records, and they are really common. I've seen them in thrift stores even very recently. This is excellent. You got to have this. It's a really excellent group, the Everyman Band. They did a follow-up that only got issued in Europe, unfortunately. This is called Without Warning. Same personnel. And and the same theory, the group, different members of the group writing the tunes. There's some really cool tunes on this. Great guitar playing by Torn, and Marty Fogel's a really good player. He did a CD on the CMP label called Many Heads Bobbing that's very worthwhile getting. It's the same band but a different guitar player, and I think maybe Michael Shreve might have been on drums on that. But these are just fabulous records, and if you're into heavy fusion, jazz rock fusion, you need to get the Everyman Band records. They're tremendous. Now, I was talking about ECM. My favorite guitar player, one of them of all time, is Teria Ripdahl. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. He's just the greatest. I love him. Get anything he does. He's done some really heavy stuff for ECM. This is a record I got, and this is the deluxe edition, which is a little bit more expensive. See, it's got the fold-out jacket and gatefold. This will set you back a few more bucks. There is a somewhat later issue on the Antilles label that doesn't have the gatefold jacket that's super cheap. But it's called Morning Glory. It's an actual band. And look at that lineup. John Sermon, John Marshall from Soft Machine, Teria, the genius, Chris Lawrence, amazing bass player, John Taylor, great keyboards player, plays Rhodes on this, lots of effects, and Malcolm Griffiths on trombone, another name that will be familiar to those of you who are into free jazz. And he was in like Elton Dean's 9 Cents. Bands like that, Chris McGregor's big bands. This is just a hell-bent for leather, free-leaning sort of fusion jazz rock masterpiece. Just teeth bared, blood dripping from the lips. Just This is such a wonderful record. Got this when I was in high school, and it never let up. And it's you got to get it. Going to wrap it up with a few more classics and then one sort of wild card. Philip Catherine, one of my favorite guitarists of all time. This is one of the greatest fusion records ever recorded. September Man came out only in Holland. Of course, Philip Catherine's from sort of the UK, Belgium. He's sort of an EU citizen kind of guy. Later on, kind of got straight ahead, but early on, he was like right up there with Coryell and McLaughlin and Teria and all those guys doing high energy fusion. And this is a classic record in the genre, and it's still cheap, and it's got great personnel. Philip Catherine, Palle Mikkelborg on trumpet. Jasper Vantoff on keyboards, Charlie Mariano on saxophones, John Lee and Jerry Brown round out the rhythm section. So this is absolutely smoking. You got to get it, and it's not super expensive. It might set you back a little bit if you're in the US because you're going to have to pay the extra postage, but it's worth every penny. This is the follow-up. It's a little bit more artistic. It's a little less smoking, a little less straight ahead. There's some really cool acoustic stuff on this. Mostly, yeah, the same guys. Rob Franken at some keyboards on some tracks, and there's no Polly Mickelborg on it, but Charlie Mariano's on it. And this is really a great record. Can't go wrong. This is actually a lot cheaper than September Man, which is the one you need, but this is also great record. Very, very unusual. It plays banjo on it. So last thing I'm going to talk about is something I just recently got, another Chris Cole recommendation, and nobody gets this record. I mean, it's out there. It's on Discogs for like $5 or £5. It's a British band called Sunwind, and this record kills relentlessly. It's a little bit out. That's the only caveat. If you don't like out jazz, you might want to see if you can find some tracks on YouTube before you plunk down your hard-earned on this one. But that said, this is David D. Fries on trumpet, a really amazing and underrated British trumpet player. Nick France on drums, one of my favorite drummers. He was in First House, a band that recorded for ECM and a bunch of other groups in England, in the UK. Chucho Merchan on bass. He played with Phil Manzanera, and he's kind of a session guy. Plays great bass on this, but the real guitar god on this is a guy named Mark Wood, who didn't record much, and I don't know what he's up to now, but he does some really amazing stuff, does a lot of guitar synthesizer, doesn't sound anything like Pat Metheny. And this record is just hell-bent for leather, go for it, balls to the wall, mastery from beginning to end. I was shocked. I was told, by Chris, oh, you should get this, you might like this. And I didn't really, follow up, and it's plentiful and cheap, and I put it off. And then I did the thing that I always do. I ordered sort of a brick of records from Europe to save on postage, and this was one of them that was in there. It was like €5 or something. I thought, well, now's the time to get this. Well, this was the star card in the batch. Love this record. I've played it a lot, and when you get it, you will too. So that's it for, there's more out there. Oh my gosh, there's so much more out there. You just got to keep your eyes open. Don't get hung up on the super rare stuff. Don't get hung up on those blue notes. There's so much other stuff out there that's actually still relatively inexpensive, at a fairly affordable price point that you might not have, or you might have passed on because, whatever. I do the same thing, so don't feel bad. Anyway, until next time, enjoy the music.